Alrighty, alright. And going live. Holy, hands are so dirty. I'll explain why my hands are dirty in a minute. Hi, everybody. It's Jason with Green Country Agroforestry here. How's everybody doing tonight? I see Sassafras Red's here. Vicky's here. Oh, I got some mail from Vicky. I got to show you that stuff here in a minute. Carolyn is getting ready to head back to Florida. Hi. Hope the trip was good. I imagine you saw a bunch of stuff that looked a bit like this out there in Georgia. Oh, here, let me try to adjust the camera here. Some stuff that looked a bit like this out there at the place in Georgia. Lots of clay, huh? Pull that over here to kind of get an example of what we're talking about here. Of course, that's clay. That's a bunch of oxidized soil. Not much organic matter in it. It's got lots of minerals. It has the ability to retain water once it's got some water in it, but it's not supporting a lot of life. We got to do something about it. We want to make that look more like this here, right? Would you believe that this here just a year ago looked a bit like this? All right. So what's going on here? We've got oxidized soil, lots of clay on the one hand, doesn't support life very well. On the other hand, we've got raw organic matter. This is bits and pieces from a tree. It's been shredded up. There's leaves and bark and little bits of wood in there. All right. And then I've got this container here full of rich, dark, very, very moist, crumbly material. You can see a little bit of the twigs in here that they crumble up very, very easily. That's all that remains of what was the twiggy bits of wood chips a year ago. So the question is, what we do to this to make it rich and moist and really liking to hold on to moisture and support lots of life. What did we do to it? Can anybody guess what we did? Let you guys put your thoughts in the comments. What did we do to not have this, but to have this instead? And yes, this did have something to do with it. Brian's in here with us, sitting in at the holodeck. Yeah, I've been busy. I've been busy not gardening. I've been busy running around doing normal human stuff. Holiday things, eating turkey, cooking turkey, making pumpkin pies. No, that's a lie. I didn't make any pumpkin pies. I made sweet potato pie. And Vicky is asking me if I got the maypop seeds. I did. I've got them right here. I've got an envelope right here that has maypop seeds in it. We're going to open this thing open. Open this thing open. That's smart right there. We're going to open this thing up and see what's inside. Good evening, Ken. Howdy. I got some mail here. This is from Vicky. Vicky Savage. She sent me some. She says it's maypop seeds or Passiflora incarnata. A good old North American passion flower. Passion flower is a tasty fruit, a vining plant. It's a perennial. And it's also medicinal. Just kind of cool. Oh, there they are. There's the fruits in the bag. They're all dried up. Mostly dried up. Yeah. They're pretty good, in good shape. We're going to have to put these out here and get them stratified and not lose them. But thank you, Vicky. Vicky sent me these. Those are nice size too, even after they're dried up. But that's the fruit of a passion flower once it's been dried. And the seeds are going to be in there. So we're going to get these out there and get them nice and cold, maybe freezing. And then in the spring, we'll get them started and hopefully have some passion flowers and passion fruit growing around here. The medicinal properties of passion fruit are similar to Valerian officinalis, from which we got Valium. It's a antispasmodic, mild sedative, anti-anxiety medication, but it's very, very mild. So mild that you can give passion fruit juice to hyper children and it will calm them down without drugging them, which is kind of cool. So there we go. And it tastes good. At least I like the way it tastes. Thank you, Vicky. I've got a couple other types of passion fruit that we're going to try too. So we've got a Passiflora Cerealia, which is supposed to be growing a little bit further south than here, but we'll see if it grows. And she sent me a note. They vine rampantly, she says. They prefer shade. That's nice, but they need something to climb. That's perfect. That is absolutely perfect, because this is exactly what they need. They need to have their roots down there somewhere protected, and they like to grow up and seek the light. So they have their, it's great. It's a good plant for growing in a complex system like this. Here are all the maypops she could find, and reach. Yeah. Yeah, probably. That's nice. She says she's getting some more from Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Well, thank you very much, Vicky. All right. I read it. Mary's still driving. She was putting trailers away when I talked to her earlier. She said she was trying to hustle. I told her, no, don't worry. I'm not going to talk about anything she hasn't heard a dozen times before. Of course, tonight we're talking about oxidation versus composting. And there's the things that happen to organic matter, all this lovely stuff that makes it wind up looking like this and not like this. And there are things that we can do to help that and make it look more like this. I guess to start out by saying, probably about a year or so ago, I went over to visit the Robertson Belly Acres. They live here, not too far away from me, and they were at not their new place. It was their old place, the one that they relocated from whenever they embarked on the house flipping venture. Their old place was up on a hill, about 5 acres or so. Lots and lots of oak trees on that hill. It looked down into the Arkansas River Valley. You could almost see the river. I guess whenever the leaves were off the trees, you probably could look down and see the river. And all across this hill, like I said, covered with oak trees, forested. It had been forested apparently for at least 40, 50 years. They did come through and clear cut it at some time in the past, but this is what had grown back. Oh, I put some real cream in the coffee, so I'm enjoying it a bit too much. Sorry. Okay. So you would think after 40, 50 years of trees growing, not being cut back, allowing their leaves to fall, hopefully you'd see maybe some nice, rich soil down there underneath those trees. But no, I went there and I looked, and lo and behold, I could reach down right there in between the trees and pick up a handful of soil, and it was mostly sand. Very little organic matter at all. And it looked like I was in Florida. This is a place overlooking the Arkansas River, a place that was inundated at one time. There is a lot of sand that got piled up there, but by golly, we had trees growing. We had 40 years worth of wilderness growth, nothing going on there. It should have built up organic matter, but it didn't. Instead, I looked and I found that all across the surface of the soil, all the soil was, it was oxidized. So what happened? Why is it that we had this source, these trees that were producing lots of leaves, but they didn't convert to organic matter? What went on? And I had to think about this. Okay, why is it that we have some places where you have nature composting and generating organic matter, producing this stuff, and other places it doesn't happen? Now, there's a few things that come into play. All right, sometimes you're going to have things like grass, windrows, hedges, things like that are going to catch the leaves and debris. Otherwise, wind blows them off. So first off, you've got the wind blowing away your leafy matter, so it doesn't accumulate. Nice hilltop, it's exposed. The wind blows along, whoosh, blows it off. Maybe it goes down in a valley somewhere. So you didn't get that. Then you've just got a thin layer of organic matter on the surface. Thin layer of organic matter doesn't hold water very well, so it dries up. And it dries up, and it starts to get bombarded by UV radiation. It's exposed to the elements, heat and cold. There isn't anything living in it. There's no moisture in it. it dries up, it crumbles, turns to dust, and blows away. So you're left with maybe the heavier sand particles, some of the silt that's left behind. You're left with stuff like this, right? And so even though you had something that could produce organic matter, it didn't compost. It just oxidized. So the difference that we had between here and here was, yes, a lot of moisture, and I used worms. I used a lot of worms. So what I did was I took these wood chips and I sifted them. I took out all the big pieces, stuff like this, right? A little too big, just a little bit too big for a worm bin, but it's not bad for a walkway. This will take about a season or two, maybe 2-3 seasons, about possibly even, to thoroughly decompose. But meanwhile, down here at the bottom of the cup, after I sifted out all of the big stuff, well, I'm left with the fine material, right? All the leaves and the dust, the stuff that's going to decompose within 6 months, whether I do anything to it or not. If I keep it moist and I keep it dark, I keep it protected and keep it covered, then it shouldn't oxidize. It should compost. So I should get stuff like this. And to help me out with that, we introduced earthworms. So fine sifted wood chips, lots of earthworms, and we get a good organic matter that holds its texture and form. This is mostly worm poop. It's not wood chips anymore. It has been converted into worm poop. And incidentally, that's the reason why I brought over these little wet wipes. Because I got worm poo all over my hands. So I've been making a video about this over the course of this past 10 days, 12 days or so, whenever I've got the weather for it. And what you're going to see whenever I finally get it edited is something that consists of probably about 5 or 6 days worth of shooting for the few hours that we had sunlight and decent weather. And we're going to try to pretend that it's all the same day or something like that. But you'll be seeing a video where we get into detail about how I go about sifting the chips and setting up worm bins. Fun times. But what if you don't want to go to the trouble of raising your own worms? That's work. Who wants to raise their own worms? Well, you can just allow the native ones to do the thing that they do. You just have to create the appropriate environment for them. Yes, trees are part of it. You need to have a canopy, shelter, shade for those worms. Preferably more than one layer canopy, and then maybe an understory underneath that. So you have some areas that stay shaded all day long. That shade is one thing. You also need protection from wind. You don't want your organic matter being blown off the surface. If it dries up and blows away, then you don't have it. So you're going to have lots and lots of things to trap and hold your organic matter down here on the ground. So that's herbaceous perennials, vines, shrubs. Of course, yeah, you can build fences too. Fences do it, but just planting a row of perennials will do this. Whenever the trees drop their leaves and the wind starts to blow, it hits a line of perennials that are standing here that take a while to decompose in place. So they're going to trap your leaves and organic matter and create drifts. And those drifts will pile up and they will allow you to actually trap and hold some moisture. Now, the surface layer is going to oxidize. That's going to happen, always does. But what stays underneath it has the opportunity to convert to organic matter. And of course, that's really what we need. I think you could probably sum up farming as being that procedure by which we take productive, fertile land and slowly convert it into deserts over time. And it's a little bit nuanced, but it's not completely inaccurate. Whenever we farm, whenever we till up the soil, whenever we expose the surface, we are creating the situations necessary for oxidation. When we come back and we do some regenerative techniques and we plant cover crops afterwards, for example, we've got winter wheat in the backyard right now. It's gorgeous. It's green. I woke up this morning and it was frosted over, and it was frosted over yesterday too, but the frost thaws and it didn't hurt the wheatgrass. It's still there and it's growing. It's rich and it's luxurious and green, and it's about the only green thing that we have anywhere around us at the moment. with the exception of the purple dead nettle. It's always green too for some reason. But I don't eat the seeds of purple dead nettle. I do occasionally eat some wheat. So this is a kind of a supplemental crop. I'm not going to grow enough wheat to make all the bread or bread-like products that I might possibly want to eat. I kind of want to cut those out of my diet anyway. But I am going to grow enough that I can have seed to plant again next year. And of course, enough that if I want to, I can take it and I can grind it, make flour with it, use that to flour up my fish fillets and roll those in egg duck egg and cornmeal. Of course, we have the ducks, we grow the corn, and I can have breaded and fried catfish that we made ourselves, which is wonderful. It's out there in the backyard, growing at all times. Well, something's growing at all times. Vicky's saying the Dust Bowl was in part nature's vengeance on Earth abuse. It's an interesting way of putting it. I don't like to think of it that way. I don't like to think of the Creator God as being a God that punishes, because I don't think that's accurate. I think there are basic principles upon which the universe is founded, and if you go against those, you suffer consequences. But it's not the same thing as punishment. You know, I can be told, hey, don't mess with that pot of peas boiling on the stove. And if I decide to go and mess with the pot of peas boiling on the stove and I get myself burnt, it's not because the person that told me not to mess with the peas is punishing me. It's simply because that's the way the world works. And if you mess with the hot stuff, you can get burned. And those are called consequences. So Dust Bowl is a consequence. Consequence, not necessarily wrath. Although it feels that way to those of us who have to suffer from I didn't suffer from it. Lots of people did. But for those people that suffered from the consequences of the Dust Bowl, it does feel like the earth has turned its wrath loose on you, right? You mistreated the earth, and now you're paying the consequences. Yeah, right. Vicky's saying his worst punishment is to leave us to the unmitigated consequences of our choices. Well, that's it. And in that case, it isn't punishment at all. And whenever somebody comes along and says, hey, you shouldn't do this, that, the other thing, it's not because you've got some totalitarian jerk upstairs that's just looking for an excuse to punish people. It's because it doesn't want people to have to suffer horrible consequences, but they will if they do the wrong things. So till up the ground, don't plant anything behind it, let it oxidize, and there will be consequences. I mean, if I could write that in the scripture, I guess I would. Thou shalt not leave the ground bare. If that was if that could be written in a book somewhere. And then of course you're going to have people that they're going to pop up and go, oh, you don't have to follow what's written in that. This is old stuff. Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to present this material, actually. I flirted with talking about it a couple of different ways. And I think what I'm eventually just going to do is present building a worm bin using totes. I've got the bottom ones already pre-drilled, so I'm just going to show how I drilled the top because I need to make a new top. And then filling it up, sifting chips, filling it up, how we do that, a little bit of why. When we do it in place, when I sift the chips and put them out over the surface, it's accomplishing something. It's covering the surface so that we don't have the surface of the soil itself oxidizing. We'll have a layer of mulch oxidizing above it, right? That's not a whole lot better. So over time, we want to have more shelter, more protection, more shade, more of the stuff in the picture behind me, right? Somebody named Hello There just popped in. What a great name. Well, hello there. Thank you. I appreciate it. Brian said, if you dig down here, there's like 4 to 5 inch organic. Then it's like sand for concrete, and then striations of clay. Oh yeah, sand and clay mixed together, and then it gets wet and it sets up. Yep. Well, where you're at, it's only been building soil for what? Maybe 9,000 to 10,000 years tops, give or take. I'll have to take a moment and write that down. Jared Diamond. There have been a lot of people that write about the consequences of poor agricultural practices. I kind of wonder um, how long people were farming in the American Southwest before it became a desert. Did farming in the American Southwest have anything to do with desertification, or was that just going to happen anyway? Um, you know that if we go into the Fertile Crescent region in Persia, areas that have been under cultivation for, to our knowledge, at least 5,000 to 6,000 years or so, there are not a whole lot of really great, or there is not a whole lot of really great farmland there. The soil is very, very badly abused. Um, it seems like nowadays the established farms, what we're mostly doing is just a holding action, really trying to keep them productive, where most of the organic matter is depleted out of it, most of the minerals are depleted out of it, and they're just spraying chemicals over dirt trying to get plants to grow. That's kind of grim whenever you think about it, because that's where most of the world's food supply comes from. Hmm. How is there not more before red clay? Oh, hello. There's wondering how is there not more before the red clay? Well, yeah. Uh, Whenever you have oxidation, you're just left with the clay and the silt. That's it. It's because it's so hard for organic matter to get built up um, naturally. Is it? I guess, yeah. Natural cycles build it up, but there are a lot of things that interfere with that development to the point where you get a little bit, and a little bit, and a tiny amount of natural soil building that occurs. And then some places, and sometimes it gets built up big. What we want to do is try to figure out what makes the soil build up naturally into deep areas and then try to artificially create those. And oddly enough, edge is the way you do it. Having places where you go from one type of terrain or one thing to another. Every time you have a transition, you've got differences in elevation that trap material, and places where energy exchange occur, places where there's light and shadow, boundaries and edges create places for life, and life interacting with your organic matter is what makes it hang around. Um, Let me see. Vicky saying, yeah, there's some evidence. There is. I'm just wondering how extensive and how long they did it. So I was getting ready to put some of this material into my worm bin right here. This is a charcoaled hazelnut husk. I ate hazelnuts. I saved the husks. We used them for fuel, made charcoal out of them. And then after I quenched it, I was going to put it into the worm bin. So I dropped it in the worm bin, and I was putting some old pumpkin and stuff like that in there. And I noticed that the worms in my worm bin, which have been there since last year when I put the bin together, I did a video. I showed you how to capture wild worms and build a bin with the wild worms. So these wild worms are some of them are what we call Asian night crawlers, jumping worms. Oh, crumbling my charcoal here. Others are red wigglers that I got from Green Greg's. Well, at least they're a few generations removed from the ones I got from Greg. And we've turned them loose. They're running around outside right now. Well, I don't know how much they're running. They're worms. They don't run. They don't have legs. They're wriggling around, but it's cold, so they don't wriggle much. they're living in the soil, living there in the leaf litter, living under the trees, all around the property here. And so whenever I build up a pile of organic matter and I get it nice and moist and make sure there's a little bit of urea in there so they smell that and they're attracted to that, and make sure it has shelter and let it sit for a while. Well, the worms come in, and then after a few months, we have tons of worms. I scoop them up, throw them in a bin, we're back in business again. If for any reason I needed to restart a worm bin, so we're good, covered. This jar of organic matter here, this thing, this was sifted worm chips at the beginning of the year. So if you go back and look at that video, that's what it was. All right. Rick Larson. Brian's asking if I ever watched Rick Larson in Michigan. No, but Larson, the name Larson sounds familiar. I know some Larsons. I wonder. Hmm. Hello, they're saying cardboard's awesome for them. Yeah, it is. They love the cornstarch in between the corrugations. It's great for them. And of course, it traps moisture, provides shade, provides shelter, and the cornstarch is a food source. So all of that's great for the worms. That'll make them happy. Anyway, so I was making this charcoal. I was putting it into the worm bin. Realized, oh my gosh, this thing is overflowing. The worms are trying to escape because it is like you saw, almost pure worm castings. There's not really a whole lot of material there anymore, and so yeah. I don't know if it's good for them, but they sure like it. So I said, okay, I know it's kind of chilly out, but I'm gonna have to make up a new worm bin. I can't put this thing off anymore. So I did a late season worm bin breakdown and rebuild, and we just took some of the old dirt worms, cocoons, and all, and just threw it back in there into. We took one bin, broke it apart, made two bins, and then we've got about half a bin worth of this material here. Well, I reach down and pull it up again. So we had half a bin worth of this material. So about maybe 5 gallons of this that we were left with. So there we go. I mean, isn't that pretty? Nice crumbly texture. And it is very, very moist. I tell you what, so whenever I got this bin started out, I soaked it down really good. And then about maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I added maybe 2 or 3 more gallons of water, and that was it. And it is still moist. Still, even after all this time, and I haven't done anything with it. I really did nothing with that worm bin. Occasionally, I threw some scraps in there. Occasionally, I threw some lawn clippings. Yeah, it's just throw it in there, forget about it, let the worms take care of it. Now, if you're doing it in place, you sift your wood chips, you put them out in your garden, and then you pile on your organic matter. And once again, the worms take care of the rest. But you got to make sure you have shelter for your worms and your organic matter so it doesn't oxidize. Water, shelter, shade. That's what you need. If you have water, shelter, and shade and worms, then your organic matter will build up just fine without any trouble. And if you're taking scraps, wood chips, stuff like this, the thing I've been working on so far this year, sorry, that's clay. The thing I've been working on so far this year is our technique for sifting and getting this separated out. But you see, that little bit of charcoal I got there from, I'll put it back in the worm dirt. That little bit of charcoal that I got there from the hazelnut husks, that was a byproduct. The hazelnut husk was a byproduct of me eating hazelnuts. I mean, I love hazelnuts as food. The husk was a waste product, but I turned it into fuel. But it's not just fuel either, because once I'm done with it, that remainder, the thing that's left, the charcoal, is something I can use as an amendment and add in along with those worm castings into the garden. And it is a reservoir and store of nutrients and water also in the future. So I can take these little bits, right? And whatever I don't use in my walkways to bank water in my walkways, I can also use as fuel, turn into charcoal, inoculate, and put out in the garden as well. So I've got all kinds of wonderful stuff going on here. Oh my goodness, I just cursed. Delete that part. You didn't hear anything. Well, it is. It's poo. It's worm poo, and it's wonderful. Okay. There we go. Hey, Cowboy Rogers coming in from Central Texas. You guys staying warm down there? Tell you what, we had a couple chilly days, and today was kind of okay. It wasn't too bad. I'm playing with my worm dirt here. Most of it's worm castings. You have a few pieces that look like that. So that is about all of the old wood chip that's left. And the rest of it is indeed poo. But since it has so much nitrogen in it, the wood sort of disintegrates like that. So, yeah. Let me see here. Hello there's asking, where are you? North, south, or in between? Who are you asking? Oh, you're asking Cowboy? I don't know where he's at in Texas. Depends upon what time of day it is. Roy drives a truck too. I'm spelling tea here. Oh my goodness. Real cream. It's an indulgence. Okay. That's it. I'm done with coffee. Right, says, good it for a while. I dumped old frozen defrosted material in from an old job and done. Yeah, Brian's got lots of worms. And bees. He's got bees too. 28 degrees in northern Arizona. Good Lord. You see, yeah, Greg's got, this isn't Greg's dirt, by the way. This is actually mine. It's a little bit redder than Greg's is. It's got a little bit more phosphorus in it. That stuff that Greg has, it's got really, really good properties. It's nice silica hydrate. Very, very slippery. Very, very slippery. This one, it's a little slippery, but it's got a lot more coarse material in it. Like, you see a little tiny smudge on my hand, right? That's the dust from that little bit of clay that we got. And it's got a little slip to it, but Greg's is a lot better if you were going to be making pottery. That's a little bit lighter than this stuff is. But that's okay. It'll still grow. It'll still grow. Oh shoot, I just spilled it all over the floor. Oh, it's pretty slick. Whenever he stopped by here on his first trip back, his van had a bunch of that clay on the running boards, and I checked it out. I wasn't entirely certain if it was just from the road or if it was from his place too. But whenever he got the camera back out there and was showing us what he had on the surface, his entire property is covered with this. It's good pottery clay. And it's going to have the minerals in it, maybe not as many as we got here, but it's going to have enough. Problem is, it's oxidized and it doesn't have any life in it. And since it doesn't have any life in it, it doesn't have any way for the plants that are planted in it to absorb those nutrients, because those nutrients, if they're not already dissolved if they're not already in soluble form, they have to be made soluble before the plants can uptake them. So they may be there, present in that clay substrate, but unless something happens to make them go into solution, the plants can't absorb them. And you're wondering, well, wouldn't they just go into solution if you got water there? Well, that's interesting, because you see, we have rain in the desert, right? So all the soluble nutrients are subject to runoff. This is what happens whenever we put nitrate fertilizer on the surface of the soil. We have our ground, we tilled it up, we destroyed the microbiome, so now we have to add nutrients so the plants can grow. But the nutrients are soluble, so whenever it rains, it leaches out of the field and goes downstream and off and gone. So all those soluble nutrients that were there are gone after it gets washed over and over and over again. So the clay in the desert is oxidized. All the nutrients are washed out of it that are soluble. Doesn't mean that it doesn't have any nutrients left. They just have to be made soluble. The plants aren't going to do that themselves. They need bacteria and fungi to do that. Bacteria and fungi need to be fed, and they need water, and they need shelter and protection. So if you want to take desert and turn it into productive land, you have to do those things. You got to provide the shelter. You got to make sure you have the water on it. You got to make sure it has the shelter and the shade. Sassafras red. So that caliche is murder when, yeah, it is. Murder when wet. Spent an hour one time in New Mexico, high centered, going back and forth in his truck. Finally got to a side road, allowed him to get turned around. Yeah. In West Texas, if you want to put in a septic tank, you need to bring along some dynamite. In any case, Mary and I have been talking a bit about this. She's wondering about how Greg is going to go about getting the water part taken care of. Right? He's been wondering about it too. Well, she overheard him talking about how when they came out and looked, they said, "Okay, it's gonna take a lot to get down to the aquifer to drill, and it's expensive, right?" And I'm thinking, yeah, if you're going to go from the top of the property down to the aquifer. Now, if you go down to the bottom where the cottonwood's growing, that cottonwood has a connection to the aquifer. The only reason it's able to grow is because it has water there all year round. And the reason it's got water all year round is because from that point, that low point where the water is settling down, there is a connection to the aquifer. Brian said the problem with gardening here is the trees shaded all out. Yeah, you have to open up enough canopy space to have your row crops in. Greg has friends all over, not just the A states. Anyway, so what would you do? You can get a shallow well, one kind of like what we have out here in the backyard, Sandpoint, put in nearby where that cottonwood is. The story that I wrote, Crow Mother mentions the guy that lived here previously, or in this area previously, had found the cottonwood tree and cut it down and blasted it out and dug down beneath the roots to build his well. And it sounds horrible, but it's completely untrue. That's not what happened. Well, at least not to the best of my knowledge. All I know is there used to be a well there. That's all I know. But the reality is that cottonwood trees are not going to grow unless they can get to a constant supply of water within about 10 feet of the surface. Cottonwoods won't. Willows won't. What else? Alders won't. There's quite a few trees that you can use as indicators to tell you that there is a good supply of continuous water nearby, and cottonwood is one of them. So he's got one down there at the bottom. He's got a place where he can put a well in, a sand spike in, and get water reliably. I don't know how much. Depends upon how porous the ground is there, what kind of flow rate he can get. But there should be an ample supply of water, at least for one person to be able to use there. At least for one person. And then, of course, you've got the rainfall, and even the most arid portions of the desert out there are going to get probably 9 to 10 inches. I mean, on a bad year, 9 to 10 inches a year, maybe less, maybe 8 on a bad year. Well, 8 inches of water, whenever you've got a lot of rock to capture it and concentrate it, can be corralled into water catchments and kept. You just want to make them deep and narrow, so you don't have a lot of surface area on the top for your water to evaporate out. And then you just keep them going down, plant in between them, and you should be good to go. But that takes money or time. Lots of time with people to do work, picking up rocks and putting them down and stacking clay. Yeah. Yep. It's 40. Yeah, it's 40 acres. It's already paid for. There's a good drop down. I mean, it's not steep, but it's got a respectable drop from the top to the bottom, and lots of places along there where you can set up water catchment. So I don't think water's going to be a problem, at least once he's got his infrastructure set up. Now, it'd be a problem if he just started with nothing and went there and went, okay, we got the clothes on our back, we're going to make a living here. It would be difficult because the only place you can reliably get water year round is right down there at the bottom where the cottonwood is. I think he's in desert cultivation. Rocks are used for mulch. Well, she's not wrong. And you can experiment with this too. If you've got a raised bed or something where you're working, try this out. Come springtime, try this out. Take a rock or a brick or something you've got, and on a day when you're not going to water, right? You weren't planning on watering it, so you doesn't need it. Take that rock or a brick or put it out there on the ground or on the surface of your bed, and leave it there. And after a day or two, come back like in the morning and lift the rock up and see what's under it. And you'll find underneath it, of course, it's been shaded, it's been protected, right? The rock is on top of the soil. The soil still has its organic matter and everything else in it, and the rock is providing shelter. And so there's shade under it. There's not surface evaporation going on under it. There's no oxidation going on under it. And so when you pick the rock up, the soil underneath it is still moist. It's kind of cool. And I'm just stepping on that. I'm stepping on that clay that I spilled on the floor and just sort of grinding it to powder. Oh no, my house is a pigsty. Oh. Sasspress Red was a moved back north. I missed rocks. Then I remembered I have black dirt. I don't miss rocks as much. Yeah, rocks are convenient though. Whenever all you've got is sand and clay, rocks are convenient. I have to go out and buy rocks so I can have rocks. That's just not fair. Some people get all the rocks, you lucky dogs, you get all the rocks. I hated them when I was living in Missouri. I hated the rocks because I had to go through the surface. This is my job as a teenager, right? Whenever we moved to Missouri, I had to go through all the surface of the hilltop that we were on. We had about maybe quarter acre or so, about that much of a hilltop in Taney County, Missouri, about an eighth of a mile away from Rockaway Beach, Missouri. No, an eighth of a mile away from Lake Taneycomo. I don't know why I keep saying Rockaway Beach. Rockaway Beach is the town that's on Taneycomo, just maybe about a mile or two down the road. But we're an eighth of a mile off the lake, up on the hill. And up there, we didn't have a problem with oxidation. I just read what Vicky typed. We didn't have a problem with oxidation. Our problem was there wasn't any soil at all. It was just the only soil you got was the stuff that formed in the gaps between the rocks. You know what I'm talking about? So you'll have limestone rocks that covers the entire top of this hill. Very, very thin layer of organic matter over the top of it. Whatever soil was there, it's a little bit. The trees grow up out of that and they break the rocks up further. And about the only soil you really have is that little bit that's formed sort of in the crevices between the rocks. Well, that's the thing, though. Those crevices in the rocks trapped organic matter and provided the shelter and held the water so it could convert to composted organic matter instead of oxidizing. And that's the reason why we had the soil that we did. Otherwise, it's a hilltop and it would just blown away. So I guess the fact that we had rock was a good thing. So we actually did have some soil formation. But it was a lot of work digging those things out, carrying them up, stacking them up in walls, and then what you're left with behind, that's the stuff that you could plant in. And it took a while before we got, you're going to hate this, my parents wanted, and they got a lawn. That's the reason why I was doing all that work on a quarter acre, was so that they could have a lawn on a hilltop. So I can't even be proud of the work we did there because we created a lawn. But we created a lot of rock walls. And if I was going to be in charge of doing that entire project, I was a teenager, so I wasn't even asked for my input at the time. But if I was going to be in charge of it, I would have been building them in terraces and using that rock to terrace down and then soil build and everything else. But hey, don't ask the kid what you think he should do. Yes. Exactly. More, that right there. I mean, it's 40 acres, and it's going to need a lot of work. It's either it needs a lot of work or a lot of money, one of the two. What I'm hoping is he's close enough there to some other folks that might be able to help out. Um, I ought to go. I had to go rattle the cages at Permies and see if there's some folks in the neighborhood that would like to help out. There just might be. Paul Wheaton might have some students. Send some of Paul's students down there. It's like, hey, today we're going to be building swales. We'll show you how to build swales, how to properly set up a dam. That would be fun. Yeah, Paul's everywhere, including on my hard drive. Apparently, I've got gigs and gigs and gigs of Paul Wheaton stuff that he dumped on me. I donated $100 to making a film on rocket mass heaters, and there was a bunch of free stuff that came along with it. Brian's asking if I'm still building a pond this winter and building a wall. Building the pond and building the wall are unscheduled planned projects. So they're going to happen when they happen. I don't know when. Currently, we're on the I threw away the sketch paper I had. Currently, we're on that flow chart of get dumpster, clear out carport, disassemble carport, disassemble garage. And I think disassemble garage is going to happen before build wall, or kind of at the same time, because the garage has a whole lot of old cement blocks that aren't great for a whole lot else, but they would be great for building an old retaining wall with. So on the back half of the property that nobody's going to see, that's where we're going to put those. And then the digging the pond thing is just going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I think it's going to be dependent upon when I get the foundations for that wall, or at least the footprint for that wall established, because I've got to put all the clay and sand somewhere, and I can't just bring it up and put it on the surface again, because that would be going backwards. I've spent a few years trying to build up organic matter, and I don't want to bury it under substrate. And then if I'm going to put that clay somewhere, I'd have to strip off all my good organic matter first, put it somewhere, put the clay down, put the good organic matter. It would be a pain. I need someplace where I can put the clay, where it will be out of the way and not a problem. And building a wall is the best thing I can think of to get rid of it, so it won't be an issue. I'll build a wall. I'll make it about 3 or 4 foot thick, however many three cinder blocks is. So they're 16 inches long, so we'll have 8 16. I say so. There's 8, 16, and 16, 32 plus 4 is 36. About 3 foot. There we go. It'll be about 3 foot wide. 3 foot wide, maybe 4 foot wide. I don't know. However long we make it. However wide we make it. And then running the length of the backyard from the west and the north side. That should give me a place where I can put all the clay and sand and everything that I'm going to be digging out, not just from the duck pond, but I have other ponds I want to make too. And Carolyn said, I'm building the wall with the clay. Yes. Yeah, essentially, that's what we're going to do. We're going to dig out all the clay that I can, and all the sand and clay that I can't grow anything in. And whenever I'm making ponds and things like that, we'll put that in the walls. So we'll build the walls up with the stuff there, and that'll get it out of the way. Hopefully, that's the plan. So we'll see. At the moment, I'm in the we're in the planning stages. The renting of the dumpster is the next part. We've got some more regular, mundane, ordinary, oh wow, life happens sort of expenses we have to take care of first. A cremation and replacing a water heater and stuff like that. You know how it is. But then we'll be back on track with doing improvements. Yay. Don't put it up. What? Don't put it uphill. We don't have any uphill here. It's all flat. Horribly flat. Slight angle. Put a marble on one corner of the property and let it go, and it just sort of gathers speed as it rolls down. No, it's not Kansas, but it's fairly flat. So some of the usual things I would love to do, build terraces and catch water going down. Can't do that. It's all flat. So if I want to capture water, it produces some problems. Okay, if the water falls, right, it rains, I can capture water running off my roof and put it in barrels, and we can draw it off the barrels, let gravity flow and do irrigation that way. That's not a problem. But what do you do with the rest of the water, huh? We can gather it in ponds, we can gather it in cisterns, but then we have to find some way to pump it. Having an elevation means you don't have to pump it. You can open up a valve and let gravity take care of it. So I kind of, I don't know. It's nice to not have to walk up and down hills. It is. Oh, don't put the red clay uphill. Okay, yeah, I gotcha. Oh, it's all red clay here. It's all red clay. It's either sand or red clay. The bright side is it's full of phosphorus. The downside is, although the phosphorus is there, it has to be made available for plants to uptake it. And for that, you need living microbiome, fungi and bacteria. But that's okay. We're making it happen. Sassafras contemplating an English walnut tree. Don't contemplate too long. If you contemplate an English walnut tree for too long, then you'll never see walnuts. Oh, there's a dug a pond, put the clay uphill, and it washed back in. Oh no. Oh no. Yeah, you got to have something to hold it in place. So yeah, we've got cement blocks that we'll be using. Let me see. Contemplating English walnuts. Anyways, so cement blocks on okay. Well, I don't have a sketch paper, do I? No. All right. So imagine this. Okay, we're lining up our blocks, right? Stacking them, like as one does. Just hang on. Just pretend that's blocks. And we're gonna stack blocks. We're gonna stack more blocks. There we go. We're stacking our blocks like I stack pecans. Stack them up to build a wall, but instead of being just one solid wall, we're going to make a box. So it's kind of like building a raised bed with cement blocks. But instead of putting good soil in it, we're going to put all our crummy soil in it. All of the crummy soil. So the crummy soil goes into this raised bed, which is really just a really thick wall. That holds the clay in, makes a good solid wall. We'll come back on the top of it, and the top maybe 16, 18 inches or so. We'll put decent soil up there. And then the top of that I can plant with anything I want. I'm thinking lots of thorny stuff, like winged prickly ash. Yeah, there'll be a cement pond too, sassafras. But winged prickly ash, flowering quinces, black locusts, stuff like that. So 4 or 5 foot of wall that you could climb up, and then you get hard prickly stuff that you don't want to climb into. So I can have an open backyard, more or less. I mean, there's a little bit of wall that you'd have to look over if you want to peer into the backyard and be a busybody. But it'll have a nice open natural feel, and the smaller animals can move in and out at leisure. But the two-legged ones are going to look at that and go, yeah, I think I'm going to go around to the front and use the gate or the door, the places where I'm supposed to go. But yeah, the duck pond is supposed to be a cement pond We're going to use cement for the pond liner. Make it, I don't know, maybe about 200 or 300 gallons or so. And then I want to do a series of long, narrow ponds, kind of like the box wall, but in reverse. They're just going to go down instead of going up. But that would be cement, and after it cures and everything, we'll be able to fill it with water, seal it, fill it full of water, and have the fishies in it. Uh-oh. Had to do some security on one lot. Wonder about that. You've been fairly lucky having all of your lots fairly, at least I thought they were all fairly close together, but being in town has its own particular challenges because you have different kind of critters that live in town. Woohoo! Progress. Got a shop and a greenhouse, unheated. Is it a Wallapini? Have you managed to build your Wallapinis yet? Or a Wallapini yet? Or is it just a greenhouse? No judgment. Oh, by the way, I'm drinking green soda. That's why it's invisible and you can see the gnome. Gnome soda. There we go. I have dreams of Wallapinis. I'm weird. I have dreams of building greenhouses with their tops shedding their water off to permanent ponds built around them as both a supply of water, a supply of fertility in the form of fish, and a thermal battery. As a person was trying to get into a camper. I mean, people got to live somewhere, I guess. But whenever they're getting into trouble, that's another story. What to do about the homeless folks, huh? It's taken 6 years to get the greenhouse figured out. Whew. I kind of know what we need to do. It's just a question of getting together the cash and the gumption. But we got a ways to go before we're there, I think. Because I don't know. I can build a smaller greenhouse, a smaller, more or less permanent greenhouse, one that the hail's not going to destroy. We can build one of those. And I kind of have plans to. My basic sketch for the woodshed, not the one made with cattle panels and canvas tarps. That's a little redneck. but a more permanent woodshed. The idea I had for it could very easily lend itself to being a greenhouse. You just switch out the roof and one of the sides with, instead of plywood and corrugated steel, you get polycarbonate panels instead, and that's it. You got the greenhouse off the side of the house and call it the redneck heater. Well, I mean, yeah, they can get cooking if they get enough solar capture, to the point where if you don't have the right kind of ventilation in them, you can cook your plants. I was rather surprised at how well they heated up once they start heating up. In the middle of the winter, they still get way too cold. Like dead of the winter, in the middle of the night, they'll still freeze. It gets cold in there. Yeah. Roy says soil doesn't hold well, but could probably hold about 10,000 gallons. Why is the soil not holding well? Is it just you've got sandy soil composition, or hang on a second. You mentioned where you were at earlier, didn't you? 10,000 gallons is plenty. Texas Hill Country. Okay. Okay. Actually, yeah. Lots of limestone. And limestone's kind of porous too. I mean, you wouldn't think it is, but it's full of cracks and fissures. So you might want to find some way to get it completely sealed first. And yeah, I'm thinking concrete. I mean, I don't see any problem with using concrete for a pond, for water catchment, for irrigation. Fill it up, seal it. Make sure you introduce the necessary microbiome, the bacteria that you need. Maybe some Daphnia. Throw in some duckweed and azolla on the top. If you have duckweed and azolla on the top, that keeps the sunlight from getting down into, I mean, so much to the lower portion there, the lower portion of the water. The less sun on the water, directly on the water that you get, the less algae you get. The less algae you get, the fewer problems you have with rapid fluctuations in the biofilter. Because algae will bloom, it'll grow a lot whenever it has lots of food, lots of sunlight, and then it dies off whenever it doesn't get so much. And whenever it dies off, it sucks up all the oxygen in the water, and the decomposition process kills off a bunch of fish. You don't want that happening. Less algae growing, much healthier fish. To keep the algae growing, you want the water shaded. But it doesn't have to be shaded by plants that are leaning over it. I mean, you probably do want a certain amount of that, right? Plants, rocks, whatever you can, hanging over, keeping that water shaded, sheltered, so that it's not exposed to the air, evaporating off rapidly. Keeps that water liquid. But whenever you've got duckweed and azolla on that surface, that's capturing the sun and absorbing that, so it doesn't get to the point where it's growing algae. And it's easy to, if you're fishing, toss your worm or your bobber or your lure or whatever you've got out there into the water. The duckweed part's out of the way. You get a fish, you pull it out, shake the duckweed off. It doesn't foul anything up. It's perfectly fine. The fish eat it. So that's an entire biosystem, an entire ecosystem working for you. Not just giving you water so you can keep your soil living, but also providing you with a place where you can have fish. And you're going to have fish, otherwise you're going to have mosquitoes. So to keep you from having mosquitoes in your water catchment, have fish, and then you'll have fertilizer and food. It's win-win-win all the way around. Portland cement. There you go. Yeah, yeah. Take your pond catchment and go through it and line it with cement. Oh, but just crawled across my camera. I love it when that happens. Line it with cement and then seal it. There's I got to get into this in the future because I'm going to do a lot of this coming up. I don't know. It may be a winter project. There are additives you can put into your cement that will make it more resistant to water infiltration. So it's called plasticizer. You're putting plasticizer into your cement, Portland cement with plasticizer, and put good 2 or 3 inches of that stuff down all the way around to line your pond area, and then go ahead and paint it with an additional plasticized sealant afterwards, after it cures. And then once you're done, it should hold just fine for quite a few years, just like a swimming pool. Only it's not a swimming pool. It's gonna be redneck swimming pool. Let's see. Oh, Vicky's always planning on putting in a dam to have 20 to 30 feet deep pond for micro hydropower and aquaculture. Yeah, 30 foot deep is good. Well, yeah, you have to have fish in your catchment. If you don't have fish in your catchment, you have to work to keep the skeeters out of it. So it's a no-brainer. Hey, look, we got water. Let's add fish. Okay, this is the reason why. Sandy loam, it's not dug deep enough. Talking about Roy's Pond. 10,000 should hold 10,000 gallons, but it won't hold. It's not dug deep enough to to get to only clay. Okay, so it's still in the sandy loam part. Yeah. So found one area about 3 feet from the level with a patch of more common incoming. Carolyn says, I need to learn more about building a pond. I want to eventually dig a pond on my 7 acres here in Georgia. I've got a book recommendation. It's called Water for Every Garden. No, Water for Every Farm. Sorry, Water for Every Farm. Originally written by Percival Alfred Gilman's, a pen pal of my grandfather. And a lot of the techniques you're going to read about were developed on my grandfather's farm. So it's like, hey, cool. It's just like connected to here. It was not, the copyright expired, and it was acquired by Mark Shepard up there at New Forest Agriculture in Wisconsin. So check out New Forest Agriculture. Let me get you a link. Hang on a second. New Forest Farm. Let me try it. New Forest Farm. New Forest Farm US. There it is. And books. Let me see. Water for Any Farm is the book. It's going to be right here on this page. Let me share this link. I don't get paid for this. I don't get paid for this. It's good information. So here you go. There we go. Oh, Sasper says he has that book. Yeah. But there it is. New Forest Farm US books. You can also order trees from them. Just keep in mind, you have to order a bunch of trees at once. You can't order 1 or 2 from Mark like you can from me. He sells in bulk. But then again, he's got the space for it. Here we go. But that should include, if I'm not mistaken, it includes directions on how to go about building the dam, laying in the pipes for your irrigation, so you actually have those established from the very moment that you laid the foundations for the dam. So they're already in there. You know, some of the things that you need to do and have planned out before you start, it tells you what you need to look for and how to set it up. I think there might be some Wheaton Labs videos too. I could probably dig out, but I'll have to go look for them. I'm pretty sure Paul did some where he shows building a dam and how it's done. It's not hard. It's just labor intensive. Let's see, who else am I thinking of? I think I've seen Jeff Lawton do a couple dam videos as well. Oh no. Oh no. That's kind of why I've started like writing and publishing things and like putting it in the cloud in an offsite websites and not trying to keep it all on one PC, because if my computer dies, I don't want to permanently lose the stuff that I've written. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say. While we're in the planning phases, I actually have been working on the help and labor thing. We've got local kids that we've been feeding. We fed the local kids. We got them attracted. Now, like wave some of this green stuff at them and go, hey, we have some of this green stuff. If you help me get the stuff out of this garage over here and throw it in the dumpster, what do you say? Vicky says you can't even retrieve the stuff from the cloud. Oh no. Yeah. I think we're in a pretty good position for labor. We're not too far away from a metropolitan center where there's lots and lots of folks that have need of the green stuff in order to survive. So all we got to do is acquire some of the green stuff, and we'll be good to go. We don't have much green stuff though. We grow lots of green stuff, but not the kind of green stuff that the kids like these days. They like the green stuff that has old dead people on it. I don't know. It's weird. But So that's it. That's the show today. If you want to have good organic matter that looks like this and without the bugs crawling over it, sorry about that. Don't know where he came from. It's probably cold outside. You can start with these and wind up with this. You can do it in worm bins, but you can also do it out in the open too. Keep watching for more updates and we'll show you how. Hey, that's all I've got for you today, good people. As always, I hope you found tonight's video informative or entertaining, or both, or maybe you just wanted to sit down and talk to some other people that aren't completely and totally crazy, or the kind of crazy we are is the kind of crazy that's compatible. I don't know. I like going and chatting with people on live streams. It's good to be in the audience and hang out and socialize. Okay. Cowboy finally got back around to finishing. There we go. Sandy loam, not dug deep enough to get to clay, and there's an area 3 feet from the level with a patch of sand in one spot of the pond. Okay. So like there's a spot where there's sand and you don't know how far down that goes. That could be a connection to the aquifer. It just needs time to charge or something. Who knows? But yeah, okay. So it's going to require some additional excavation and then something to seal it. That's work. Oh gosh, that's work. I hate work. I'd probably better go ahead and head to bed myself because tomorrow I've got some more. Hopefully we'll have the video on how we go about making worm bins out of wood chips, horticultural wood chips. I don't know if I'm going to have a snazzy title for it or if it's just going to be, here, I'm making a worm bin. Yeah, enjoy. I don't know how I'm going to set it up, but that's coming up. What else we got going on? Sometime in the near future, I'm going to have to start a push for the rehoming of a maple tree. Yep. Well, we'll probably run out there and mark it tomorrow. I've got a silver maple that got to be about 2.5, maybe 3 foot tall, right there in the corn patch. Now, the seed fell there and it germinated and started growing. It's right at the end of the row in the corn patch. And I looked at that thing in the spring and said, I don't think I'm gonna pull this one up. I think I'm gonna go ahead and let it grow. So it's had one full season of growth. It's like close to 3 foot tall with one season of growth. It's doing great, but it's getting ready to lose its leaves. So I'm gonna mark it so I know that one's a maple, and we'll see if we can get somebody interested in adopting it. And we'll get it relocated because I can't let it grow there next year. It's too close to the septic system. It's going to mess the lines up if it grows. So it's got to be removed. But it just would seem a shame to remove it and let it die. And I don't have any place to put it over here. So coming up probably next week, we're going to have a telethon and try to rehome a maple tree. Well, no, maybe not a telethon, but I'll start listing them on the website or something. In any case, good night, everybody. Be good or be good at it. And I will catch you next time.